She won $50 million and ran to surprise her husband. The sounds behind his office door froze her. The first thing Claire felt was heat in her face, like someone had opened an oven door right in front of her. She stood in the small convenience store near the bus stop, holding a thin paper ticket between her fingers. Her hands shook so hard the ticket made a soft, nervous crackling sound. The cashier watched her with bored eyes at first, then leaned forward when he saw her expression change. "Ma'am," he said, "slow now. Are you okay?" Claire could not answer. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The screen above the counter still showed the numbers, bright and sharp, final and clean. She looked at them again, even though her eyes already understood. The cashier's chair scraped the floor as he stood up. "Ma'am, you need to sit down." Claire's knees felt weak, like they were no longer connected to her body. She took one step back and bumped into a shelf of snacks. A bag of chips fell and landed near her shoe. She did not look down. $50 million. The number felt too big to be real. It did not belong in her life, not in her quiet life with a second-hand car, in a small rented home, in a kitchen table that wobbled if you leaned on it. She finally managed to whisper, Is that real?" The cashier swallowed. His voice changed from bored to careful. "It looks like it, ma'am. You need to call the lottery office. Right now. I can print the instructions." Claire stared at him. She saw his lips move, but the words floated past her. Her heart was beating so loudly she thought he might hear it. 50 million. A few minutes earlier, she had been standing in line with a bottle of water and a small packet of painkillers for her headaches. She had bought the ticket without thinking much. It was a habit, a small hope she allowed herself once a month. Something harmless. Something that never came true. And now it had. She walked out of the store like someone in a dream. The sunlight hit her eyes and she flinched. The street sounded normal: cars passing, a dog barking somewhere, a bus groaning as it stopped. People moved like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Claire sat in her car and locked the doors with shaking fingers. The steering wheel was warm. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against it. For a moment, she did not cry. She just breathed fast and shallow, trying to hold herself together. Then the tears came sudden and messy. She cried like someone grieving, not like someone celebrating. It surprised her. She had always imagined winning would feel like fireworks, like laughing and jumping and calling everyone she knew. But what she felt was a heavy flood inside her chest. Relief, yes. Fear, too. And something else, something sharp, like a question she did not know how to ask. Was she allowed to be this lucky? Was she allowed to change her life? She wiped her face with the back of her hand and tried to think clearly. The ticket was still in her fingers. She held it like it might disappear if she let go. Her mind went to the first person she wanted to tell. Ethan, her husband. She pictured him at the breakfast table that morning. The same white shirt, the same quick look at his phone, the same rushed bite of toast. He had kissed her cheek as he walked out, but it had been a light kiss, like a habit, like checking a box. "See you tonight," he had said, already reaching for the door. Claire had watched him leave her coffee, cooling in her hands, and felt that familiar quiet ache. It had been there for a long time, not loud, not dramatic, just present. Like a thin wall between them that grew higher every week. They had not fought. They were not cruel. They were just distant. Even when Ethan was home, he was often not really there. His mind stayed at work or inside whatever private place he went to when his eyes looked past her. Some nights he sat on the couch with his laptop open, typing, his jaw tight. When she asked how his day was, he said fine and kept typing. Claire had stopped asking certain questions because the answers were always the same. And still she loved him. She loved him in a way that had become quiet too. A steady love, a patient love. The kind of love that washed dishes and folded laundry and made sure his shirts were ironed. The kind of love that waited. Sometimes she wondered if Ethan noticed how much she waited. Sometimes she wondered if she had become invisible, She took a deep breath and sat up straight. Her eyes went to her phone lying in the cup holder. She could call him right now. She imagined his face when she told him. She imagined the way his eyes would widen, the way he would laugh, the way he would grab her hands and pull her close. She imagined him saying, "Claire, you did it. We did it." She imagined them hugging in the kitchen, the kind of hug that lasted longer than 3 seconds. She imagined their life opening up, a better home. No more worry, no more checking the bank app with a tight chest. Maybe travel, maybe time. Maybe they could finally breathe again. Maybe they could finally find each other again. Her fingers hovered over his name. Then she stopped. Something inside her rose up bright and urgent. A need. Not just to tell him, but to see him. To be in front of him. To watch the truth hit his face in real time. To feel their lives shift together in the same room in the same moment. She wanted it to be special. She wanted it to be theirs. So she did not call. Instead, she turned the key in the ignition. The engine started with a soft cough. Claire looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her cheeks were red, her eyes wet. A woman on an ordinary weekday wearing a simple blue blouse and cheap earrings sitting in a dusty car. A woman who somehow had just become a millionaire. She laughed once, short and breathless, then covered her mouth with her hand. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Okay. Breathe." She put the ticket into her wallet carefully like it was made of glass. Then she drove. At every red light, her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Her thoughts ran in circles. She kept seeing the numbers. She kept hearing the cashier's voice. 50 million. She drove past the quiet neighborhoods, past the small park where she sometimes walked on Sundays, past the coffee shop where she had met Ethan for their first date years ago. The memory hit her like a soft punch. Back then, Ethan had looked at her like she was the only person in the room. He had asked her questions and listened to the answers. He had made her laugh until her stomach hurt. Where had that Ethan gone? Maybe this money would bring him back. Maybe this surprise would wake something up in them. The thought made her press the gas a little harder. The buildings grew taller as she got closer to the business district. Traffic thickened. Her phone buzzed once with a message from a friend, but she did not look. She kept her eyes on the road. Ethan worked in an office building downtown, a modern glass building with a lobby that smelled like polished stone and expensive perfume. Claire had been there only a few times, company events, holiday parties. Ethan did not invite her often. He said he was busy. He said it was mostly boring work stuff. Claire had accepted it. She always accepted things. But today she was not accepting distance. Today she was bringing something huge, something bright, something that could change everything. By the time she found parking, her hands were sweaty. She sat for a moment with the engine off, listening to her own breathing. Her heart felt like it might jump out of her chest. She opened her wallet again and looked at the ticket just to make sure it was still there, just to make sure she was not dreaming. The numbers stared back at her. Real. She closed the wallet and held it against her chest like a secret. Then she stepped out of the car, shut the door, and walked toward her husband's office. And as she crossed the street with the city noise around her and the glass building ahead, Claire did not know that she was walking toward the moment that would split her life into two parts before and after. Claire's shoes clicked on the lobby floor as she walked in. The sound felt too loud for her ears, like everything inside her had turned up to high volume. The air conditioning hit her skin and made her arms cold. The lobby smelled like clean stone and coffee and something sharp like expensive cologne. A security guard sat behind a desk near the entrance, watching people pass through the glass doors. Claire slowed down, forcing herself to look normal. She pushed her hair behind her ear with fingers that would not stop trembling. She told herself, just breathe. Just walk like you belong here, because she did belong here. She was Ethan's wife. She had a ring on her finger, a shared address, shared bills, shared years. Still, she felt like a visitor in her husband's world. Good morning, the guard said, polite but firm. His eyes dropped to her hands, then back to her face. Claire gave a small smile. Hi, I'm here to see my husband, Ethan Pierce. The guard's face stayed neutral. Do you have an appointment? The word appointment landed oddly in Claire's chest. An appointment to see her own husband. She swallowed. No, it's a surprise. The guard looked at her for a second longer, then glanced at the visitor log. What floor, 17, Claire said. Her voice sounded thin. He handed her a clipboard. Sign in, please. Her name looked strange in her own handwriting. She wrote Claire Pierce and paused for half a second before she wrote her phone number. She felt the weight of the last name. Pierce, Ethan's last name. The name she had taken with hope and pride. The name she still used even when she felt lonely in her own kitchen. When she finished, the guard gave her a badge and pointed to the elevators. Take the bank on the left. You'll need to scan the badge to select a floor. Thank you, Claire said. She walked toward the elevators, her steps quick and purposeful. But inside, her thoughts raced. She was not the kind of woman who did things like this. Claire was usually careful. She planned meals on Sundays. She paid bills on time. She liked simple routines because routines made life feel safe. Surprises were not her style. Sudden changes made her stomach tighten. But the money had cracked something open in her. It had hit her like a wave, and it had pulled her forward. It had told her, go, don't wait, don't be small, don't be quiet. So she stood in front of the elevator doors with her badge in her hand and her heart beating like a drum. While she waited, her mind drifted back to the life she had lived before this morning. A small house in a quiet neighborhood, beige walls, a backyard that needed work, a sofa with a worn armrest, a bathroom fan that made a loud rattling sound. Nothing terrible, just ordinary. Claire had always told herself ordinary was fine. She worked part-time at a local daycare. She liked the children. She liked their laughter and the way they ran to her with sticky hands and wide smiles. Her job did not pay much, but it made her feel useful, and it made her feel needed in a way she had stopped feeling at home. Ethan worked long hours in finance. His job paid most of their bills. When he got promoted 2 years ago, they had celebrated with a cheap bottle of wine and a dinner at a small restaurant. Claire had been proud of him. She still was. She had believed his promotion would bring relief, but the relief never really came. Ethan's hours got longer. His phone rang more. His mind seemed farther away. The money helped, but the distance grew. At first, Claire tried harder. She cooked new recipes. She bought candles. She planned weekend trips, small ones. She suggested movie nights. She asked him questions. She tried to pull him back toward her. Sometimes it worked for a short time. He would smile. He would hold her hand for a few minutes, and he would say, "Sorry, it's just been crazy at work." And she would say, "I understand." She always understood. But understanding did not fill the quiet. There were nights when Ethan came home late and went straight to the shower without saying much. There were mornings when he left early with only a quick kiss on her cheek. There were weekends when he said he needed to catch up on things and he sat in the home office with the door mostly closed. Claire had learned to read the shape of his moods. She could tell when he was exhausted, when he was tense, when he was distracted. She could tell when not to ask for anything. She could tell when to keep her sadness to herself. It had become a skill, a sad one. Still, she loved him. She loved the memory of who they were. She loved the small moments that still happen sometimes, like the way he rubbed his eyes when he was tired, like how he still liked his coffee with 2 sugars, like how he laughed when an old sitcom played and a joke hit him the right way. She held on to those pieces as a proof that something real still existed between them. And beneath all of that, she had hope she rarely said out loud. Claire wanted a baby. She had wanted one for years, but she had stopped bringing it up after too many quiet conversations that ended in Ethan's tired voice. "Not right now," he would say. Soon she would ask, trying to make it light. He would sigh and look away. "Claire, I can't even think about that with everything going on. Everything going on. Always everything. Claire told herself she could wait. She told herself timing mattered. She told herself love was patient. But sometimes patience felt like slowly disappearing. She had friends from high school who posted pictures of their children online. First steps, first birthdays, little hands holding crayons. Claire smiled at those pictures and wrote kind comments. Then she put her phone down and stared at the wall for longer than she wanted to admit. When she looked at Ethan, she saw a man who was working hard for their future. But she also saw a man who seemed to be living in a different room from her, even when they shared the same space. And she wondered quietly if she was enough. Was she too simple for him now? Was she too ordinary? The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. Claire stepped inside quickly as if she could not let doubt catch up to her. A woman in a gray suit stood near the back scrolling on her phone. A man with a briefcase stared at the floor. No one looked at Claire for more than a second. She scanned her badge, pressed 17, and watched the doors close. As the elevator rose, her stomach lifted with it. She rested her palm against the cool metal wall for balance. Her mind swung back to the lottery, the moment in the store, the cashier's voice, the numbers burning into her eyes. $50 million. Claire had grown up in a home where money was always a worry. Her mother worked long shifts at a hospital cafeteria. Her father had left when she was 10. There were years when the electricity got cut off for a day or two. Years when her mother smiled too hard and said, "We're fine, sweetheart," even when the cupboards were half empty. Claire learned early to not ask for much. She learned to make do, to stretch things, to be grateful for small gifts, to feel guilty when she wanted something nicer. When she married Ethan, she thought money would stop being a constant fear, and it did for a while. But even then, she never fully relaxed. She still checked prices. She still bought store brands. She still thought in numbers. Winning 50 million was not just a prize. It was like being told she could finally breathe, like being told she could finally stop counting. But the first person she wanted to share that breathing with was Ethan. Because despite everything, despite the distance and the quiet, Claire still saw him as her partner, her person, the one she wanted beside her when something big happened. She imagined him looking at her with real attention again, not the distracted glance over a phone screen, not the tired nod. Real attention. She imagined him saying her name the way he used to, warm, present. "Claire," he would say, and his eyes would shine. She imagined his hands on her shoulders steadying her. She imagined his voice breaking with emotion. She imagined him laughing and then pulling her close like he was afraid she might slip away. And she imagined what they could do with the money together. They could pay off every debt. They could buy a home with a real yard. They could fix the wobbly kitchen table and replace it with one that didn't shake under their elbows. They could travel somewhere they had only seen in pictures. Italy, Japan, somewhere that didn't feel like their current life. They could take time off. They could rest. Ethan could breathe too. Maybe with that weight gone, he would come back to her. Maybe he would stop staring past her. Maybe the quiet between them would finally break. And maybe, just maybe, when she told him the idea of starting a family would no longer feel impossible. A small, hopeful warmth spread through her chest as the elevator climbed. She could already see it. A new version of their life. A clean start. A second chance. The elevator dinged again. The doors slid open to a bright hallway with framed art and clean white walls. Claire stepped out. Her feet moved before her mind could slow her down. She followed the signs toward Ethan's company name. She had been here before, but only as a guest. Today felt different. Today she walked like she was carrying something powerful. As she neared the office area, she saw people in business clothes moving between desks and meeting rooms. Phones rang softly. Keyboards clicked. Someone laughed near a coffee machine. The sound was normal, professional, calm. Claire's heart hammered harder. She held her wallet tightly in her bag like the ticket was a living thing. A young receptionist sat at the front desk looking at a computer screen. She glanced up when Claire approached. "Hello," the receptionist said with a practiced smile. "Can I help you?" Claire smiled back, trying to look confident. "Hi, I'm here to see Ethan Pierce." The receptionist's fingers paused above the keyboard. "Do you have a meeting scheduled?" Again that word, scheduled. Claire's face warmed. "No, I'm his wife. I wanted to surprise him." The receptionist's smile softened a little. "Oh, okay." She looked at Claire's visitor badge and typed something. "One moment. Let me see if he's available." Claire waited, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. In her mind, she replayed the moment she would walk into Ethan's office. She pictured him looking up from his desk, annoyed at first, then confused, then, when he saw her smile, curious. "What are you doing here?" he would ask. And she would say, "I have news." He would think it was something small, maybe a family matter, maybe a bill problem. Then she would tell him, and his whole face would change. The receptionist looked up. "He's in his office right now," she said. "But it shows he's in a meeting." Claire blinked. "A meeting in his office?" "Yes," the receptionist said. "Sometimes he has private meetings there." Claire's smile stayed in place, but her stomach tightened slightly. "Private meetings. Can I just knock?" Claire asked. The receptionist hesitated. "I can message his assistant first." Claire thought of sending a message, of warning Ethan, of giving him time to prepare his face and his voice. That was not what she wanted. She wanted the truth pure and immediate. "It's okay," Claire said softly. "I'll just be quick. It's important." The receptionist studied her expression, then nodded. "All right. His office is down that hall, last door on the right." Claire thanked her and walked away. Her steps slowed as she entered the hall. It was quieter here. The carpet muffled sound. The lights were softer. The air felt cooler. Her excitement was still there, but it mixed now with a nervous energy, like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to jump into a new life. She reached the end of the hall and saw the door. Ethan Pierce. His name was on a small metal plaque. Clean letters. Formal. Claire stood a few feet away and stared at it. Her heart thumped so hard she felt it in her throat. She lifted her hand, ready to knock, and then she stopped. Because from behind the door she heard something. Not silence. Not Ethan's usual quiet voice on a phone call. She heard voices. Low at first, then clearer, and Claire's fingers froze in the air as her surprise turned into something else, something she could not name yet. Inside the office, Ethan Pierce sat at his desk with his sleeves rolled up and his tie loosened. The room was neat in a careful, controlled way. Papers were stacked in even piles. His laptop was open screen, glowing with charts and numbers. A framed photo of him and Claire on their wedding day sat near the edge of the desk, turned slightly away from the door. He had not noticed that detail in a long time. Ethan rubbed his forehead with two fingers and let out a slow breath. His chest felt tight, like it had been for weeks, maybe months. He had stopped counting. Across from him on the small couch near the window sat a woman in a dark green blouse and black pants. Her name was Marissa. She worked in the same department 2 levels below him. Smart, calm, always composed. She held a notebook on her lap, but it had been closed for a while now. The meeting had stopped being about work 10 minutes ago. "I'm just saying," Marissa said gently, her voice low, careful. "You don't have to carry all of this alone." Ethan leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. The lights above him were too bright. Everything felt too exposed. "It's not that simple," he said. Marissa nodded. "I know. You always say that." He looked at her then. Really looked at her. She was watching him closely, her expression open but serious. No judgment. No impatience. That was what made it dangerous. At work, Ethan was known as steady and focused. the man who always had answers, the one who stayed late and took on extra responsibility without complaint. His boss trusted him. His team relied on him. No one saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. No one saw how he sat in his car some nights after work, gripping the steering wheel and staring at nothing, trying to remember when he had last felt excited about his own life. Except Marissa. It had started small. Conversations after meetings, shared frustration about deadlines, jokes whispered during long presentations. It felt harmless at first, friendly, human. Then one evening after a brutal day, he had stayed late. Marissa had been there too. They had ordered takeout and talked until the office was almost empty. That night, Ethan had said things he had never said out loud before. "I don't know who I am anymore." He had told her, staring at the city lights through the window. Marissa had listened. She had not tried to fix him. She had not told him to be grateful. She had not reminded him of his responsibilities. She had just said, "That sounds lonely." And something in him had cracked. Now sitting across from her, Ethan felt that same crack widening. "I feel like I'm failing," he said quietly. "At work, at home, everywhere." Marissa leaned forward slightly. "You're not failing." He shook his head. "You don't see it. I go home and I'm empty. Claire looks at me like she's waiting for something I don't know how to give." He did not see how saying her name out loud changed the air. Marissa's eyes flickered for half a second. Then she smoothed her expression. "Have you talked to her?" Ethan laughed without humor. "Talk to her about what? That I feel trapped, that I feel like I'm disappearing, that I wake up some mornings and dread the rest of my life." He pressed his lips together, realizing he had said too much. Marissa was silent for a moment. The hum of the building filled the space between them. "You love her," she said finally. Ethan nodded automatically. "Of course I do." The words came out fast. Too fast. Marissa studied him. "But are you happy?" The question landed hard. Ethan opened his mouth to answer. Closed it. His jaw tightened. "I don't know," he admitted. He thought of Claire standing in their kitchen asking him how his day was. He thought of the careful way she spoke lately, like she was afraid of pushing him too far. He thought of the quiet in their house, thick and constant. He had told himself it was normal, that marriages settled into routines, that passion faded and responsibility took its place. But some days he felt like he was living someone else's life. "I don't want to hurt her," he said. Marissa's voice softened. "I know." She stood up slowly and walked closer to his desk. Not too close, just close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something light, clean. "You don't have to decide everything today," she said, "but you can't keep pretending you're okay when you're not." Ethan swallowed. There had been a moment a few days ago when everything had crossed a line. They had been alone in this same office. Late again. The door closed. The city dark outside. He had said, "Sometimes I wish I could just stop being the responsible one." Marissa had looked at him and said, "You're allowed to want more." The silence after that had been charged. Thick. Full of things unsaid. When she had reached out and touched his arm, he had not pulled away. That touch had lasted only a second, but it had stayed with him. Now in this moment he felt the weight of that memory pressing against his chest. Marissa rested her hand on the edge of his desk. "Ethan," she said softly, "what do you want?" He closed his eyes. What did he want? He wanted to feel alive again. He wanted to feel seen without having to explain himself. He wanted relief from the constant pressure of being needed, being stable, being strong. He wanted escape, but he also wanted to be a good man, a loyal husband, someone who did not break promises. Those wants pulled him in opposite directions until he felt torn in half. "I don't know," he said again, his voice rough. Marissa took another small step forward. Her knee brushed the desk. "You don't have to answer me," she said, "but you should answer yourself." Her closeness made his breath catch. The office felt smaller, the air heavier. Ethan's phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at it, grateful for the interruption. A work email. Nothing urgent. Marissa noticed the phone too and stepped back slightly. The moment shifted, but it did not disappear. It hovered between them, fragile and dangerous. "This isn't why I asked to meet Ethan," said, trying to regain control. "We were supposed to talk about the forecast numbers." Marissa smiled faintly. "We already did." She picked up her notebook, though it remained empty. "Ethan, whatever happens, you should be honest. With yourself. With her." He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the desk. Honesty felt like a threat. The truth was, he had been avoiding Claire emotionally for months. He told himself it was stress, that it would pass. But he had also been drawn toward Marissa in ways he did not fully admit even to himself. He had not slept with her. He had not kissed her. But the line was already blurred, and deep down he knew that. Marissa walked toward the door and paused, her hand on the handle. She turned back to him. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "you deserve to be happy too." Then she opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. Ethan stayed seated, staring at the space she had just occupied. His chest felt hollow. He did not know that just outside the same door, Claire Pierce was standing still, her hand frozen in the air, listening. He did not know that the life he was trying to escape was about to collide with him head-on. Inside the office, Ethan leaned forward and covered his face with his hands. Outside the office, Claire heard everything, and the truth was already breaking her open. Claire stood in the hallway like her feet had been glued to the carpet. The door was closed. The name on the plaque was still clean, unchanged. But the sounds behind it had cut straight through her. A woman's voice, low, calm, close. Not the sharp tone of a conference call, not the distant echo of a speakerphone. This voice was near, intimate, the kind of voice people used when they were not afraid of being overheard. Claire's hand hovered inches from the door. Her knuckles felt stiff, like they no longer belonged to her body. She told herself she must be misunderstanding. Offices were full of people. Meetings happened. Conversations happened. But her heart was already pulling away, like it knew something her mind was trying to deny. She leaned closer without meaning to. Her ear almost touched the door. "I feel like I'm failing," Ethan's voice said. Claire's breath caught. She knew that voice better than anyone. She knew the way it sounded when he was tired, when he was honest, when he had stopped pretending. Her chest tightened painfully. At home, he rarely said things like that. When she asked how he was, he said fine. When she asked if he was okay, he said, just busy. But here behind this door, he was saying everything. At work, at home, everywhere. Claire pressed her free hand against the wall to steady herself. At home, with her. The woman spoke again. "You're not failing." Claire squeezed her eyes shut for a moment. The voice was warm, understanding, supportive in a way Claire had tried to be for years. "You don't see it," Ethan said. "I go home and I'm empty. Claire looks at me like she's waiting for something I don't know how to give. Her name. Hearing her name spoken like that in this place to another woman felt like being slapped." Claire's stomach twisted. The hallway felt suddenly too bright, too quiet. She could hear the soft hum of the lights overhead. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and uneven. She wanted to walk away. She wanted to turn around and leave before she heard anything else, before this moment became real. But her feet did not move. "Have you talked to her?" the woman asked. "Talked to her about what?" Ethan said, a bitter laugh in his voice. "That I feel trapped, that I feel like I'm disappearing." Claire's knees weakened. Disappearing. She had felt herself disappearing for so long, shrinking her needs, swallowing her questions, making herself smaller so he would not feel pressured. And all this time he had been disappearing too, just not alone. "You love her," the woman said. "Of course I do," Ethan replied quickly. Claire clutched the strap of her bag. The word "of course" echoed in her head. Of course. But are you happy? The woman asked. There was a pause, a long one. Claire held her breath without realizing it. I don't know, Ethan said. The answer landed like a final blow. Claire felt something cold spread through her chest, pushing the warmth out. The dream she had been carrying up the elevator, his smile, his laughter, their future cracked like thin glass. She thought of the lottery ticket in her wallet, the secret that had felt so bright just minutes ago. It now felt heavy, almost cruel. She heard movement inside the office, a chair shifting, footsteps. You don't have to decide everything today, the woman said, but you can't keep pretending you're okay when you're not. The door creaked slightly as if someone leaned against it from the inside. Claire took a small step back, her heart pounding. Her fingers curled into her palms so hard her nails dug into her skin. What do you want? The woman asked softly. Claire waited for Ethan to say her name. She waited for him to say, my wife, my marriage, my life. I don't know, he said again. That was the moment something inside Claire froze completely. Not shattered, not exploded. Frozen. All the emotions rushed in at once, shock, jealousy, grief, anger, but they stopped halfway, locked in place by disbelief. Her body went still like an animal that had sensed danger and chosen silence. She felt like an outsider listening to her own life being discussed. She realized this was not just a bad day, not just stress, not just distance. This was a different world, a private world her husband had been living in without her. She heard the woman move closer, the sound of fabric brushing fabric, the quiet intimacy of shared space. You don't have to answer me, the woman said, but you should answer yourself. Claire's throat burned. Then Ethan's phone buzzed, breaking the tension inside the room. There was a small pause. The woman stepped back. Claire could hear it. She could picture it without seeing it. I didn't ask to meet for this, Ethan said, trying to sound controlled. We were supposed to talk about numbers. We already did, the woman replied. Claire pressed her lips together to stop a sound from escaping. The door handle turned slightly. Claire jumped back, just in time, her heart slamming against her ribs. The door opened. A woman stepped out. She was taller than Claire, confident, her hair neat, her posture relaxed. Her expression was calm, almost gentle. She looked like someone who belonged there. Their eyes met for half a second. The woman's brows lifted in surprise. Then her gaze dropped to Claire's visitor badge, to the name, Claire Pierce. Understanding flashed across her face, quick and clear. Oh, the woman said quietly. Claire could not speak. The woman hesitated, then nodded slightly, not apologetic, not defensive, just acknowledging reality. She walked past Claire down the hall, her heels making soft, steady sounds on the carpet. Claire stood alone. The door to Ethan's office remained open behind her. Inside, she could see him. He was sitting at his desk, leaning forward, his face buried in his hands. He looked tired, smaller somehow. For a brief moment, Claire saw the man she loved, the man she had married, the man who had once looked at her like she was everything. Then she saw something else, a stranger, a man who shared his deepest thoughts with another woman, a man who said he did not know if he was happy in their marriage, a man who had built a door between his work life and his home life and locked her out. Her hand dropped slowly to her side. She did not knock. She did not speak. She did not cry. She turned away from the open door and walked down the hall, her steps quiet and controlled, as if she were afraid that any sudden movement might break her completely. In her bag, her wallet pressed against her side. The lottery ticket was still there. $50 million. And in that moment, it meant nothing at all. Claire did not remember how she reached the elevator. She remembered the sound of her own breathing, shallow and uneven. She remembered the way her hands felt numb, like they were wrapped in something thick and heavy. She remembered staring at the metal doors as they closed, watching her reflection blur in the polished surface. She looked pale, older. The elevator moved, but she barely felt it. Her mind stayed behind that office door, replaying every word, every pause, every tone. I feel trapped. I'm disappearing. I don't know if I'm happy. Those sentences echoed over and over like they were stuck on a loop she could not stop. When the elevator doors opened in the lobby, Claire stepped out automatically. She nodded at the security guard without seeing his face. The cool air of the building followed her as she walked outside into the noise of the street. Cars passed. People talked. Someone laughed nearby. Life continued untouched. Claire reached her car and sat inside without turning the key. The silence wrapped around her thick and heavy. She placed both hands on the steering wheel and stared straight ahead. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. She had imagined this moment so clearly, walking into Ethan's office, watching his face light up, feeling his arms around her, hearing laughter instead of quiet. Instead, she had heard another woman's voice filling the space she thought belonged to her. Her chest tightened again, and this time the tears came. Slow at first, then faster. They slid down her cheeks and dropped onto her blouse, darkening the fabric. She pressed her lips together to keep from making noise, as if someone might hear her. Her body shook. She cried for the marriage she thought she had. She cried for the version of herself who still believed patience would fix everything. She cried for the future she had been building quietly in her head, piece by piece, without knowing it was already cracking. The money sat in her bag like a stone. She pulled out her wallet and stared at it for a long time before opening it. Her fingers moved carefully, almost respectfully, as she took out the lottery ticket. The number stared back at her. $50 million. She laughed then, a short, broken sound that surprised even her. All this she whispered to the empty car, and I still didn't know. The money had not protected her from this moment. It had not warned her. It had not softened the truth. If anything, it had made the timing cruel. She pressed the ticket flat against the dashboard, then pulled it back and tucked it away again. She did not want to look at it anymore. Claire started the car and drove. She did not go home. She drove without a clear destination, letting the city streets pass her by. Red lights, green lights, familiar corners and unfamiliar ones. Her hands moved on the steering wheel, but her mind stayed far away. She thought about all the small signs she had ignored. The way Ethan took his phone into the bathroom. The way he angled his screen away from her. The way he flinched slightly when she touched his arm, sometimes like he was already somewhere else. She had told herself it was stress. She had told herself she was being dramatic. She had told herself love meant trusting, not questioning. Now those thoughts felt heavy and foolish, but beneath the pain something else stirred. Anger, not loud anger, not shouting or breaking things. A quiet, sharp anger that sat deep in her chest. She had waited. She had tried. She had adjusted herself again and again. She had given him space and understanding and time. And still he had taken his loneliness somewhere else. He had let another woman step into the space where Claire had been standing alone. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. By the time she finally drove home, the sun was lower in the sky. The light through the windshield was softer, almost gentle. It felt wrong how peaceful everything looked. She parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment staring at the house. It looked the same as always. The front door, the small porch, the window where she sometimes stood and waited for Ethan's car in the evenings. Nothing on the outside showed what had just changed inside her. She went in and closed the door quietly behind her. The house was empty. Ethan would not be home for hours. Claire set her bag down on the kitchen counter and leaned against it. The familiar smell of the house wrapped around her. Soap, coffee, something warm and lived in. She walked through the room, slowly touching things as she passed them. The back of a chair, the edge of the table, the photo frames on the wall. There was a picture of them on a beach taken years ago. Ethan had his arm around her shoulders. They both looked sunburned and happy. She stopped in front of it. "Were you already disappearing then?" she asked softly. The photo did not answer. Claire went into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets were neatly made. Her side and Ethan's side looked almost the same. She realized how strange that was, how two people could share a bed and still live separate emotional lives. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Her heart jumped, then sank. A message from Ethan. Running late tonight. Don't wait up. She stared at the words. No question, no concern, no idea that her world had just tilted. Claire placed the phone face down. For the first time since the morning, she felt a sense of distance settle in her chest, not just pain, but separation. A line drawn quietly between who she had been and who she might need to become. She went to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. Her hands were steadier now. The shock was wearing off, leaving clarity behind. She thought of the money again, not as a prize, not as joy, as power, as choice. For years, she had told herself she stayed because love required sacrifice, because marriage meant holding on through hard times, because leaving was failure. But now she wondered if staying silent was the real failure. She sat at the kitchen table, the wobbly one, and rested her elbows on it. The table shook slightly. Claire stared at the wall and let the quiet fill her. She did not know yet what she would do, but she knew one thing. The woman who had walked into that office full of hope was gone, and whatever came next would not be built on waiting. Ethan came home just after 9. Claire heard his car before she saw him, the familiar sound of tires on gravel, the door opening and closing, his footsteps on the porch. Her body reacted before her mind did. Her shoulders tightened, her breath slowed. She stayed seated at the kitchen table, the light above her casting a soft circle on the surface. The lottery ticket lay inside her wallet in her bag by the counter. She had not moved it. She had not told anyone. It felt like a secret from another life. The door opened. Claire Ethan called, his voice casual. I'm home. I'm in the kitchen, she said. Her voice sounded calm, too calm. He walked in and stopped when he saw her sitting there. She was not watching TV, not cleaning, not scrolling on her phone, just sitting. You okay? He asked, loosening his tie. Yes, she said. He frowned slightly. You didn't text back earlier. I was busy. He nodded and went to the fridge. He opened it, stared inside for a moment, then closed it again. Long day, he said. I might just grab something quick. And who is Marissa? Claire asked. The words landed in the room like something heavy dropped on the floor. Ethan froze. His hand was still on the fridge handle. His back was to her. For a second, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. He turned slowly. What he said, Marissa Claire repeated. The woman in your office. Ethan's face changed. Not much, but enough. How do you? He stopped, swallowed. What are you talking about? Claire stood up. Her legs felt steady, stronger than she expected. I went to your office today, she said. I was going to surprise you. Ethan's eyes widened. You went to my... Why didn't you tell me I wanted it to be special? He looked away. I heard you, Claire continued. I heard everything. Silence stretched between them. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Claire, it's not what you think. She let out a small, humorless breath. That's interesting, because I think you told another woman you don't know if you're happy in our marriage. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I think she went on that you share your fears and your loneliness with her instead of me. I think you let her step into a space I've been standing in alone for a long time. Ethan's shoulders slumped. She's just someone I talk to, he said quietly. Nothing happened. Claire nodded once. Maybe not physically, but something happened. She stepped closer to him, stopping a few feet away. I have asked you for honesty so many times, she said. Not with anger, not with demands, just honesty. And you told me you were fine. I didn't want to hurt you, Ethan said. Claire's eyes burned. You didn't want to be uncomfortable. That hit him. He sank into a chair at the table, and put his elbows on his knees. His voice dropped. I didn't know how to say it. I feel lost, Claire. I feel like I'm failing at everything. She looked at him, really looked at him. For years, she had only seen his exhaustion, his distance, his silence. Now she saw his fear, and it did not erase what he had done. You don't get to disappear into someone else because you're afraid, she said. You don't get to leave me standing here wondering what I did wrong. I never said you did anything wrong. But you let me believe it, she said. Her voice cracked then just slightly. She took a breath and continued. I waited for you. I made myself smaller for you. I told myself love meant patience. And while I was doing that, you were finding comfort somewhere else. Ethan covered his face with his hands. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Claire felt the weight of those words. This far. How far is that, she asked. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like the line was crossed a long time ago. He did not answer. She turned away and walked to the counter, placing her hands on the edge to steady herself. There's something else, she said. Ethan looked up confused. I won $50 million today, she said. The words hung in the air. Ethan stared at her. What the lottery, she said. This morning, before I came to your office. His mouth opened, closed. Claire, are you serious? Yes. For a moment, disbelief replaced guilt on his face. Are you? I was coming to surprise you, she said. I wanted to tell you in person. I wanted to see your face. She turned back to him. Her eyes were steady now, and instead I learned the truth. Ethan stood up abruptly. Claire, listen to me. This changes everything. No, she said softly but firmly. It doesn't change what happened. It just shows me something. What he asked. She met his gaze. I don't need to stay because I'm afraid, she said, and I don't need to beg for honesty. The room was quiet. Ethan looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. And for the first time in years, Claire felt like she was standing on her own ground. That night, they did not sleep in the same bed. Ethan took a blanket and went to the couch without arguing. He did not ask her to reconsider. He did not follow her down the hall. He looked tired, defeated, and small in a way Claire had never seen before. She closed the bedroom door and leaned against it, listening to the quiet of the house. For a long time, she stood there, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of the day settle into her bones. She did not cry. She felt empty, but also strangely clear. Claire lay on the bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts drifted not in sharp circles like before, but in long, steady lines. She thought about who she had been when she married Ethan. Hopeful, open, willing to bend. She thought about how slowly she had learned to silence herself, how she had confused patience with self-erasure. And she thought about the woman she had been today, the woman who stood in that kitchen and spoke without shouting, without begging, the woman who did not shrink. In the days that followed, the house filled with careful distance. They spoke about practical things, groceries, schedules, the dog next door that barked too much. But they did not talk about feelings unless Claire started the conversation. Ethan tried in his way. He apologized again. More than once. He said he had ended whatever emotional closeness he had with Marissa. He said he would request a transfer. He said he would go to counseling. Claire listened. She did not interrupt him. She did not argue. But she also did not promise anything. She scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, quietly, without drama. She contacted the lottery office and began the long, careful process of claiming the money. She followed every rule. She told no one outside a small legal team. She kept her name private where possible. The money moved slowly, safely into accounts she controlled. For the first time in her adult life, Claire felt financial security that did not depend on anyone else. And that changed something deep inside her. One evening, about 2 weeks later, she sat across from Ethan at the kitchen table. I've been thinking, she said. He looked up immediately, alert. Hope flickered in his eyes. I'm not making any decisions yet, she continued, but I need space, real space, not just a few nights on the couch. He nodded. I understand. I'm going to stay with my sister for a while, she said. I need to hear my own thoughts without feeling pulled in every direction. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he did not protest. How long, I don't know, he swallowed. Are you leaving me? Claire held his gaze. I'm choosing myself, she said, for the first time in a long time. Whatever happens after that, we'll be honest. That night she packed a suitcase. She did it calmly, no rushing, no shaking hands. She folded her clothes carefully. She left most things behind. When she stood in the doorway with her bag, Ethan looked at her like he wanted to say 100 things at once. I do love you, he said quietly. Claire nodded. I believe you, but love isn't enough if it makes one of us disappear. She walked out. The weeks apart gave her clarity she had never allowed herself before. At her sister's house, mornings were louder, messier, full of conversation. Claire found herself laughing more easily, sleeping better. She went for long walks. She wrote in a notebook she bought on a whim. She filled pages with thoughts she had never said out loud. She did start therapy, not because Ethan asked her to, because she wanted to understand herself better. She learned how much of her identity had been built around being easy and understanding. She learned that love should not require constant self-sacrifice. Ethan attended counseling on his own. He sent her messages sometimes, honest ones, apologetic ones. He did not pressure her. Months passed. When Claire finally agreed to meet him again, it was in a public cafe. They talked like two people meeting anew. Ethan took responsibility without excuses. He spoke about his fears without blaming her. He did not ask her to fix them. Claire listened, and she felt something settle. Not forgiveness yet, but peace. She realized she was no longer afraid of losing him, and that freedom mattered more than any promise. She stood up at the end of the meeting and smiled gently. I'm proud of you for doing the work, she said. But I need a life where I don't have to compete with silence. Ethan nodded, eyes wet. They hugged. A real hug. And then they let go. Claire walked out into the sunlight, feeling lighter than she had in years. Whatever came next would be chosen, not endured. A year later, Claire stood in a quiet kitchen that did not wobble when she leaned on the table. Morning light spilled across clean counters and wide windows. Outside, trees moved gently in the breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's dog barked once, then stopped. Claire poured herself a cup of coffee and stood by the window holding the mug with both hands. Her life looked different now. Not dramatic, not flashy, just honest. She had bought this house 6 months earlier. Nothing too large, nothing that screamed money. A calm place with enough room to breathe, enough light to feel awake in the mornings. The money was there, secure and managed carefully, but it no longer filled her thoughts. It had become a tool, not a definition. What mattered more was the quiet confidence she carried now. Claire worked part-time still, but by choice. She volunteered at the same daycare twice a week and had started funding small improvements there without putting her name on anything. New books, better play equipment, warm meals. She smiled more easily these days. As for Ethan, their marriage had ended quietly, respectfully. They had tried counseling together after months apart. They had talked honestly, sometimes painfully. In the end, they reached the same truth from different sides. They had grown into different people. They signed the papers without anger, without blame. Ethan did not ask for her money. Claire would not have offered it even if he had. What they shared had ended before the numbers ever mattered. They spoke occasionally now, brief check-ins, polite, human. There was no bitterness left. Sometimes late at night, Claire thought about the woman she had been standing outside that office door, the woman frozen by voices she never expected to hear. She did not feel anger toward her anymore, only tenderness. That woman had loved deeply. She had hoped bravely. She had stayed longer than she should have because she believed in patience and loyalty. But she had also learned something important that day. Silence is not peace, and love should never make you feel invisible. Claire finished her coffee and set the mug down. She picked up her keys and stepped outside, locking the door behind her. The air felt fresh, open. She walked to her car, not rushing, not escaping anything. Her life was no longer built around waiting for someone else to choose her. She had already chosen herself, and that she knew now was the real winning ticket.